Kei te whakarongo mai koe ki te reo irirangi o Aotearoa. This is Checkpoint on RNZ National. I'm Lisa Owen. Haere aki nei, a budget overrun in the mega millions that could literally blow the roof off Christchurch's proposed stadium. So what now? Back to the drawing board or bank? The days of the independent Republic of Pharmac are over. The government drug buying agency gets a serve and a shake-up. The brakes go on hundreds of Auckland bus trips due to a lack of drivers. Disappearing TVNZ breakfast presenter Kamal Santamaria is erased from social media too, as his old network calls a crisis meeting. A former All Black and two-time Rugby World Cup winner steps into the boxing ring for charity. And tornadoes, yep, more than one of them, rip up the Kapiti Coast. Don't forget you can catch us live on Facebook and Sky Channel 83. We are also on Freeview Channel 50.
RNZ News at 5. Talofa lava o Lo'o Ingoa o Evie Ashton. Christchurch City Council has delivered bad news about its highly anticipated stadium today, with a budget blowout of up to $150 million. The finish date has also been pushed back further to April 2026. There'll now be public consultation on increasing the budget, scaling back the project or halting work altogether. Councillor Sam McDonald says the price hike is a result of unnecessary delays.
Ultimately, this comes back to the fact that the stadium should have already been built. It was bumped down the road in 2013, and now the council are playing catch-up. And unfortunately, the ratepayers are looking at wearing the bill for a council that didn't deliver this when it should have.
$40 million has already been spent on the project, and construction is set to begin in a few weeks. There's more on this story coming up on Checkpoint. A resident on the Kapiti Coast says it was carnage when tornadoes tore roofs off houses and toppled trees. About 5 properties in Waikanai Beach were damaged after a storm struck the coastal community north of Wellington. A second tornado hit nearby Otaihanga half an hour later, demolishing a sleep-out and damaging other structures. Roger Smith and his wife Mavis were in their Waikanai Beach home when the twister struck.
We went out at the front and half our roof had gone.
Yeah.
And the fence down the front had gone. And
the gate had gone.
The gate had gone.
And there was tiles on
I think we just fell apart then.
Yeah.
At least 2 families won't be able to return to their homes tonight. Firefighters are removing a new type of hose from trucks after it failed at a fatal house fire in New Plymouth on Friday. A woman died in the fire. Firefighters say the hose failure would not have altered that, but it did jeopardise the safety of the 2 crew when they realised water was pouring out of the ruptured hose a few metres behind them. Union representative Rick Walsh says the hoses have been immediately banned.
Although it wouldn't have changed the outcome of the incident, it meant that the firefighters' safety was compromised while doing the search.
A call to remove the hoses has gone out to all stations. An advocacy group for people with rare disorders is welcoming the findings of a report into Pharmac. The independent review has found systemic failings were causing people with rare disorders to have disproportionately negative health outcomes. It recommends Pharmac takes on board the voices of health consumers and those with experience of various conditions. Rare Disorders CEO Lisa Foster says their voice is vital.
Just having the voice of the people that it's going to impact. And also I would add the clinicians who are the experts to support that voice.
The report makes 33 recommendations, but not all of them will be adopted by the government. The former Foreign Affairs Minister, Winston Peters, claims the Prime Minister should have been more aspirational going into her meeting with US President Joe Biden. Jacinda Ardern says New Zealand has reaffirmed its very, very close relationship with the United States. Here's our political reporter, Katie Scotcher.
Ahead of this morning's sit-down, Jacinda Ardern said her meeting with Mr Biden was about cementing New Zealand's relationship with the US rather than new announcements. Mr Peters says he was alarmed to hear that and questions the point of Ms Ardern's meeting with Mr Biden as she didn't expect something concrete to result. With the US looking to bolster its relationships in the Indo-Pacific, Nationals' Jerry Brownlee would have liked to see America offer greater trade access for exporters.
And the damaging winds and large waves hitting the west coast of the North Island today could continue into the evening. Met Service forecaster Angus Hines says it's part of a broader and very active weather system. He says a small but very intense thunderstorm passed through Wellington mid-afternoon but has since weakened. However, strong winds are expected in Wellington and Wairarapa tonight, while heavy rain is forecast for the Tararua Ranges. To sport, and talk of an end to Rafael Nadal's reign has proved premature again, as the clay court king stayed on course for a record-extending men's 22nd Grand Slam title at the French Tennis Open. Nadal has beaten arch-rival Novak Djokovic. In a 4-set, 4-hour quarter-final, he beat him in Paris, avenging his loss to Djokovic in last year's semi. Nadal will now play German third seed Alexander Zverev for a place in Monday's final. World number one Djokovic says he never gave up against Nadal, who is in top form.
I'm proud of fighting and staying till the last shot. Lost to a better player today, had my chances, didn't use them. That's it, over 4 hours battle, and I have to accept this defeat.
Two-time Rugby World Cup winner Kevin Mealamu wants a crack at a title of a different kind. The second most capped All Black of all time, Mealamu has confirmed he's embarking on a career in boxing. The 43-year-old former hooker will make his debut against former Warriors and Kiwis forward Wairangi Kopu in July's Fight for Life charity event. However, he's not viewing it as a one-off fight and has his eyes on the vacant New Zealand heavyweight title. And former world golf number one Dustin Johnson and past major champion Sergio Garcia are among the competitors for the opening tournament of controversial Saudi-backed LIV Golf Invitational Series. The players risk expulsion from the PGA Tour and European Tours by competing in an unsanctioned event. That's the news.
Joe Biden welcomes Jacinda Ardern to Washington.
It's good to see not so old, but a good friend. The Prime Minister is welcome to the White House.
They talk guns, Ukraine and the Pacific.
What's already established is the close working relationship that New Zealand and the United States have.
But was it a successful mission?
We wanted to make sure that the United States knew that we were open for business and open for tourism, and we have done that.
From the White House to the Beehive, Morning Reports, weekdays from 6 on RNZ National.
You're on Checkpoint with Lisa Owen next. Right now, the short forecast from Met Service to midnight Thursday. Northland, Auckland, Coromandel and Bay of Plenty. Fine spells, isolated showers becoming more frequent tomorrow morning with squally thunderstorms possible. Gisborne and Hawke's Bay mainly fine, however a few showers developing tomorrow morning. From Waikato to Wellington, including Taupo, Taumarunui, Taihape and Wairarapa. Squally showers, some heavy and possibly thundery with hail, northwest gales in exposed places easing tomorrow. For Marlborough, Nelson, Bulla, Westland and Fiordland, periods of heavy rain with squally thunderstorms and hail easing tomorrow afternoon. Canterbury, Otago and Southland, cloudy with outbreaks of rain mainly about the Otago Lakes and Canterbury High Country. Long fine spells elsewhere, but showers are spreading into Southland and eastern Otago tomorrow. And for Te Kohu, the Chatham Islands, periods of rain or showers. We'll have more news and traffic for you at about 5:20.
Ngā mihi iwi, tēnā koutou katoa, no mai haere mai ki Checkpoint I tēnei rā, ko Lisa Owen tēnei. Christchurch has a big bill to contend with if it still wants the multi-use stadium that's been in the works since the earthquakes 11 years ago. The problem-plagued project has blown out another $150 million, meaning it's going to cost about $680 million and counting. The finish date's been pushed out to April 2026, and the council's punting their hefty decision-making back to the ratepayers. The options: increase the budget, scale back the project, or halt work altogether. Tessa Guest reports.
The news is not good. Our assessment of the final bid proposal that we have received indicates a budget increase up to $150 million.
Stadium Governance Chair Barry Bragg delivered the news of escalating costs. Last week, he expected an increase of $75 million. Council Chief Executive Dawn Baxendale was also shocked to see that figure double when the lead contractor's final bid came in.
You won't get a stronger feeling. We are really, really disappointed
to see the numbers that we're seeing.
The council blames an overheated construction market, as well as the war in Ukraine and China's shutdown. They've already spent $40 million on the project, and early work is underway, with construction set to begin in just a few weeks. On top of the price tag, the stadium's finish date has been pushed back until April 2026. Opinion on the streets of Christchurch was mixed. Beth Owens lives a block from the worksite and just wants to see it done.
Go big or go home, to be honest, because if you're going to go through the effort, why do reduce seating numbers that aren't going to pull in All Blacks games and that sort of stuff, because surely that's the whole point.
She's been in Ōtautahi since the 2011 earthquakes and is frustrated by the years of delay. Her partner Justin Ripmer agrees. He thinks the council should bite the bullet.
On a timeline, it could end up being even more expensive down the road. You don't know with material shortages if it's just going to become more expensive another 5 years if they didn't do it sooner, so you can't really tell for sure.
Logan Sanko thinks the project should be scrapped altogether and the money used for housing and other infrastructure.
$700 million could be spent much better than in a stadium, There's a lot of different infrastructure needs that could be spent on and probably have better impact on the average person as opposed to a stadium.
Council staff say if the budget increase is approved, a significant increase in rates might be needed to bridge the gap. Councillor Sam McDonald says the price hike isn't ideal, but thinks it would be more catastrophic to pause the project now.
Ultimately, this comes back to the fact that the stadium should have already been built. It was bumped down the road in 2013, and now the council are playing catch-up. And unfortunately, the ratepayers are looking at wearing the bill for a council that didn't deliver this when it should have.
Locals will be able to formally voice their opinions after councillors vote to consult next Thursday, a legal requirement for a cost this large.
And joining us now is Crusaders CEO Colin Mansbridge. Kia ora, Colin. So they've hit the pause button again. What do you reckon?
Kia ora, Lisa. Yes, it's pretty disappointing. It's Groundhog Day again. I'm not sure it's anyone's fault, but it feels like we're doing it over and over again. That's for sure.
680 million. That's huge numbers by anyone's account. Can Christchurch afford it?
I think there's no doubt that the number is huge. I guess Ōtautahi is one of the, it's the largest city in the South Island and second largest in the country. So you almost have to ask the question, can we not afford to be a complete city and not have a multi-use arena here? And I think it's interesting when you talk to youth and people under 30 at the moment around here, they don't have. They start to talk about this as a place of not quite the excitement and interest of places like Dunedin and Auckland and Sydney and Melbourne and those things. So you sort of think, I think the city needs it. It probably needs it more than it doesn't need it.
Do you really think it leaves the city incomplete not to have this?
Absolutely. It's interesting we've just been to Melbourne recently, and I've travelled to other parts of Australasia, and what's clear is you go to, Melbourne's a particular example, but you go there and it feels like a very whole city, complete city. Even Auckland, it's got everything it needs. We've got a big hole in the ground, and it's right beside the central city. And every time you walk past, you just feel it's incomplete. And there's memories that a whole generation in this city don't have, that some of us who are a bit older do have. That there's events, there's concerts, there is matches, but there's those memories that the city doesn't have here, and I think for that reason, it absolutely is something that's missing from the place. It feels like our home is incomplete.
What about scaling it back, right? So, what about fewer seats, fewer than 30,000? What about getting rid of part of the roof? That's one of the suggestions that was floated. What about something less grandiose?
So I think that the roof, if we just go back to the roof, the key thing about the roof is it makes it a multi-use arena. So for concert promoters, they're really interested in certainty and being able to bring those acts to the city. I think every opportunity, when you're shocked by a number such as this, and I think most people expected some escalation, but the quantum of it was a bit of a shock to everybody. Listening to Barry Bragg, the chair of Te Kaha today, he was shocked. And so, as we all are, I think you have to think about those things. The concern I've got at the moment is we're over a decade in, and I can feel... I feel concerned that we could be 2 decades in, and that's what worries me. So we've got to get something done, and we've got to get it done soon.
So potentially ratepayers are going to have to suck up an increase in their rates. So here's an idea. What do you reckon about New Zealand Rugby chipping in?
Well, I guess that the thing is, it's New Zealand Rugby brings a test here every now and then. And you know, if we have a venue, they'll bring tests here, and they are great for the city. And great for ratepayers in this area. I think we've got to be careful that it's not just a conversation about rugby. The thing is, we're not getting concerts. You know, Pink, I won't remember all of the artists, but they all go to Dunedin. They go to Wellington. They go to Auckland. They don't come here. So it's not just about rugby. There's plenty of opportunity for this city to start to fill up with some of those events that we haven't seen for nearly a decade now.
Thanks for joining us, Colin. That's Colin Mansbridge, who's the Crusaders CEO. It is 5:15. Kia mau tunu mai. Stay with us. You're listening to Checkpoint on RNZ National. It's been months of planning and at times seemed like it would never happen. But today, Jacinda Ardern sat down with the US President in the Oval Office, just the 3rd time a New Zealand Prime Minister has visited in 2 decades. Our political editor, Jane Patterson, has the story from Washington, DC.
Well, good morning, everybody. And it's good to see not so old, but a good friend.
It's the first time Jacinda Ardern and President Biden have met face to face, and they had plenty to talk about.
I've been to more mass shooting aftermaths than I think any president in American history, unfortunately.
Then on to matters a bit closer to home for New Zealand.
We are not coming to dictate or lay down the law. We have more work to do in those Pacific Islands as well.
The US is sitting up and taking notice of what's happening in the Pacific, worried by China's security pact with the Solomon Islands and keeping a wary eye on the Foreign Minister Wang Yi's multi-country tour. Creating new alliances and connections with key regional players is one way the US intends to step up its contribution and influence in the region. Ms Ardern making the case for the Trans-Pacific trade pitch, knowing there's little to no chance of the US joining anytime soon.
Whilst of course we are significant advocates for the CPTPP, the IPEF presents a significant opportunity to build the economic resilience of our region.
With America coalition building to counter China's influence in the Pacific, Ms Ardern was asked after the meeting whether New Zealand was asked to give more of a commitment to the US.
There's no need. I think what's already established is the close working relationship that New Zealand and the United States have, that we have shared values, and really importantly, that the focus in our region is on furthering the Pacific values and the focus that Pacific Island leaders have determined for themselves.
China was discussed, but the PM was unwilling to go into too many details.
It's just reflecting on the environment that we're in, some of the recent things that we've observed. But most importantly, it comes down to our individual nations' choices and how we respond to that.
Nationals' Jerry Brownlee, a former foreign minister, says it's disappointing the CPTPP is clearly off the table when you look at what China is offering in the Pacific.
Yes, there's a concern about some of the issues of security, about the sort of bunching up of ideas that would be more controlled out of Beijing, potentially, things like that. But behind it all is the desire for those governments to do better for their people, and they need to trade to do that.
New Zealand First leader Winston Peters, also a former foreign minister, says it was alarming to hear, even ahead of the meeting, the Prime Minister expected nothing concrete to result.
Well then, what was the purpose of going? This is not a sort of a television show. This is about real issues affecting real people and about the concerns for democracy and freedom and the rule of law in our part of the world.
Ms Ardern, however, happy to just come away with the presidential sit-down.
There's nothing quite like meeting face-to-face. We were due to sit down, I believe, for just under an hour, and I believe we tipped into an hour and a half, and I think that is a demonstration of the warmth of the relationship, the common ground, little bit of shared Irish heritage. But ultimately, the fact that between us we have shared challenges, but we also see opportunities.
The White House statement issued after the meeting makes it clear the US is refocusing its attention on the contested region of the Pacific. The president was gifted a Pounamu Waihaka, a fighting club, a carved swamp Cody bowl, and 2 green swan-dry dog jackets. The First Lady's presents included a book on education written by the mother of Cabinet Minister Chris Hipkins.
The fallout from breakfast host Kamal Santamaria's resignation just 32 days into the job has continued today. Checkpoint has obtained internal emails from Mr Santamaria's former employer, Al Jazeera, calling for an urgent staff meeting. Meanwhile, Mr Santamaria's departure continues to cause ructions within TVNZ. Our reporter Nick Trubridge joins us now from outside its Auckland headquarters. Nick, what more can you tell us?
Hi Lisa, well basically what we got soon after the show last night was an internal email, as you say, from Al Jazeera, specifically from Managing Director Giles Trendle, calling for a meeting to discuss safe working environments. He also said that at the meeting suggestions would be taken on how to help those who are feeling either alone or with nowhere to go. Now, soon after I saw that email, I spoke to a number of former Al Jazeera employees. They basically told me that they did not feel there were adequate ways to report issues that came up with work, whether they be issues about inappropriate behaviour from colleagues or otherwise. In fact, one person told me that there was no mechanism whatsoever to report issues. He also told me that inappropriate behaviour at work was allowed to, in his words, flourish because it was never dealt with. Now, of course, we have taken some of these things that have been raised to senior management at Al Jazeera. We did not receive a response from them. In fact, they told us to go through their PR team. We have sent a few inquiries, a long list, in fact, to Al Jazeera's PR team, and we are awaiting their response tonight.
And what about TVNZ, Nick? Any response from them?
Well, it's radio silence from TVNZ officially. I sent their comms team a couple more inquiries today and didn't receive, well, even an acknowledgement, let alone an actual response to my questions. We have, though, got internal emails from within the TVNZ newsroom itself. One in particular from Andrew Fernie. He's a senior newsroom figure here, basically saying that he was disgusted with the conduct of some of his colleagues who have been leaking emails to the media, effectively saying that this is a time for everyone to come together, and that he felt some of his colleagues were, and I quote, willfully destroying TVNZ's brand. Well, you'd have to say that went down like a cup of cold sick, really, among some of his colleagues, some of them responding to Andrew Fernie, basically saying in one case that, if we just go to my notes here, saying anyone saying that they think leaks are the issue at TVNZ needs to take a good look at themselves. So that one you'd have to say is pretty damning. Another one that said, what sort of organisation puts its brand before the truth? So certainly not going down that well. And to top all of that off, Lisa, there was a follow-up email to all of this from another senior newsroom figure, and that was Sophie Baird, saying, and I quote, I see you, I hear you, I know you're angry, I'm angry too. In fact, I'm livid, before asking staff basically to hang in there, saying she believes greatness can come out of the situation. I just want to circle back round, though. We have yet to receive any more formal responses from TVNZ to our follow-up questions. In fact, not even an acknowledgement of what we're asking.
Thanks for the update, Nick. That is Nick Trubridge live outside TVNZ. It is 22 minutes past 5. You're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. Kia ora anō, you're listening to Checkpoint. Ko Lisa Owen tēnei. Homai o whakaro. We would love your feedback on anything you've heard on the programme this evening. If you're in Christchurch, let us know your thoughts on the stadium. Do you reckon you should stump up another $200 million and go ahead with the proposal as it stands? Yes or no, and why? Don't forget, you can text us on 2101, tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ, or the email address checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. Let's get to the headlines now. Ko Evi anō tēnei.
Tēnā koe, Lisa. Christchurch City Council has revealed its highly anticipated stadium is now projected to cost up to $683 million. Crusaders CEO Colin Mansbridge told Checkpoint the budget blowout of up to $150 million is a huge shock and pretty disappointing. At least 2 families won't be able to return to their homes tonight after 2 tornadoes hit Wellington's Kapiti Coast. About 5 properties in Waikanai Beach were damaged, while a second tornado hit nearby Otaihanga half an hour later. An advocacy group for New Zealanders with rare disorders is welcoming the findings of a report into Pharmac. An independent review is recommending Pharmac take on board those with lived experience on conditions. Firefighters say they're pulling a new type of hose off trucks after it failed at a fatal house fire in New Plymouth on Friday. A woman died in the blaze, and firefighters say the hose failure would not have altered that, but it did jeopardise their safety. A senior TVNZ news boss has told staff she shares their anger over the appointment of former breakfast host Kamal Santamaria. He quit a month into the role following accusations of inappropriate behaviour. And the Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, has given US President Joe Biden a pounamu sourced from the South Island's west coast. The pounamu waihaka is a type of fighting club used by Māori warriors and reserved for only the highest-ranking leaders. Those are the headlines. Looking at traffic now around the country, there are strong wind warnings in place for the Desert Road. Take care driving between Waiuru and Rangipo. And once again, caution is needed if you're driving across Dimutaka Hill in Wellington. We'll have the latest headlines and more traffic for you at 5:40.
Kia ora rā e ho. A report into the drug buying agency Pharmac has found it has likely contributed to inequitable health outcomes for Māori, Pacific people and people with rare disorders. The Health Minister says it'll now be bound by law to put equity at the forefront. Here's our political reporter Giles Dexter.
Pharmac is the envy of the world, according to Health Minister Andrew Little. But right here in Aotearoa, a review has come to the damning conclusion that our drug-buying agency is adding to inequities in the health system.
The days of the independent Republic of Pharmac are over. Pharmac is part of our health administration that needs to be working appropriately with the rest of the health administration.
An independent review has found while Pharmac delivers significant benefits, those benefits have not been equitable. Māori are more likely to die from cancer than other population groups, but the funding of cancer treatments hasn't acknowledged that.
Knowing that there are some cancers that where there is a higher incidence in Māori, lung cancer is one of them, the way they made their decisions didn't really take that into account, and so that's what needs to change.
The report says Pharmac's strategy is out of date, failing to take into account emerging cancer treatments or more costly medicines that target patients with rare disorders.
We wanted Pharmac to really hone up its skills on procurement, get the best deals possible. I think 30 years on, that's translated into the only strategy for good health outcomes is getting the cheapest possible drugs.
Andrew Little says while Pharmac's decisions haven't been malicious or deliberate, it's clear equity principles haven't been at the forefront of its decision-making. Pharmac will now be under statutory obligations to put equity first as part of the government's mammoth pie order bill. But Rare Disorders CEO Lisa Foster says the language of the bill might need to be made more explicit.
Equity, when it is mentioned, I don't see rare disorders being added into that conversation, despite the substantial evidence proposed in this review.
The review found systemic failings were causing people with rare disorders to have disproportionately negative health outcomes. Lisa Foster says it's vital Pharmac starts to listen to those with lived experience.
Just having the voice of the people that it's going to impact. And also I would add the clinicians who are the experts to support that voice.
The new Māori Health Authority will now play a critical role in making sure Pharmac makes more equitable decisions for Māori. But National's Dr Shane Reti believes the health reforms could make Pharmac's integration harder.
We believe a Māori Health Directorate with clear targets and clear accountability will be a way to bring Pharmac closer into the fold.
The review also criticised Pharmac for a lack of transparency. Reinforcing that criticism, Pharmac today refused to be interviewed. Instead, it sent a statement welcoming the report, acknowledging the need for improvements and saying it's looking forward to working with other health agencies to implement the recommendations. Not all of the report's 33 recommendations will be adopted by the government. Andrew Little says some are already being worked on through changes to the wider health system.
Malcolm Mulholland from Patient Voice Aotearoa joins us now. Kia ora, Malcolm. How accurately does this report reflect the reality of your experience with Pharmac?
Yeah, I think it is actually a pretty good report. I would say to people, don't just focus on the recommendations, but actually read the report as much as they can. It's very clear that they state Pharmac is a broken model, a broken system, and that change needs to happen for the benefit of New Zealanders.
Worst parts of it highlighted in this report, Malcolm, were what for you?
Probably the fact that the governance is asleep at the wheel. That they don't participate in some of the big decisions being made around which medicines should and should not be funded. And I think also the fact that Pharmac's model that they use by which to assess which drugs should and should not be funded, the factors for consideration, is broken and at times not even followed. And that is a big area of concern.
Let's look at a couple of specifics. Under the heading of cancer drugs, it noted that Pharmac's new spending over the past decade shows cancer treatment accounts for 32% of its spend, yet less than 1% of patients treated. Has cancer been the squeaky wheel to the detriment of other diseases and conditions, do you think?
Oh, yeah, cancer alongside others. I mean, cancer is just one area that Pharmac funds, and I guess if we're to look at it in terms of how many people in the population are affected by cancer. Right now, we know that it's 1 in every 3. By 2030, it'll be 1 in every 2. So the need for cancer medicines is simply going to go through the roof. We need a strategy in order to deal with that. But we also see the same stories being told in the chronic illness space, such as those with diabetes or Crohn's and colitis, and also those with rare disorders.
So, the report highlighted the fact that Pharmac has contributed to inequities, specifically for Māori, and it's going to the government's going to entrench the need for equity in this new law. I mean, but doing that, does it really make it happen?
Yeah, I don't know. Devil's in the detail on that one, and I'm not sure how that's actually going to play out. If we turn our minds back to 6-7 years ago, Pharmac there were confronted with a choice about where they should fund Keytruda for what cancer. They decided to fund it for melanoma, a condition that predominantly affects Pākehā, whereas Māori, who fall into largely in the lung cancer space, and again they needed that drug Keytruda, it wasn't funded. So how might equity work? Might that mean that if they're confronted with a similar decision that they might actually side with lung cancer and exclude melanoma? My big fear is that it's used as a rationing tool, where the real issue is about the lack of funding, so that Pharmac's not put in a position where they have to choose one condition over the other.
Yeah, but there is limited money, Malcolm, and you would appreciate that, even though you want them to have more money. And you raise an interesting point. So here's the dilemma. If you have a situation, Māori, 2 to 4 times higher mortality around cancer for Māori, should they be given preferential access to some drugs because of that inequity?
I can't honestly answer that question until I know that Pharmac's level of funding is consistent with the rest of the developed world. And by that, I'm only arguing for us to be average. Right now, we're so far behind, it's really difficult to put my finger on the pulse and go, you know what, this is the model we should be following. Let's get our house in order first, and then I think we can have conversations about which drugs we should be preferring over another.
Good to talk to you, Malcolm. Thanks for joining us. That is Malcolm Mulholland, who's from Patient Voice Aotearoa. It is 32 minutes past 5. Kia mau tunu mai. Stay with us. You're listening to Checkpoint on RNZ National. Time for the business news. Ko taku hoa e nai ko Nona Peltier, who's in the studio to talk all things business. Okay, I'm really interested in this story. We've had a lot on cost of living crisis, as some people call it. Buy now, pay later schemes. They're sending consumers into, more debt, Nona. So what are you seeing in terms of the numbers?
Yeah, so Centrix is a credit agency, came out with some statistics which indicate that consumer arrears, so that's debts that you're behind in paying, are up 12%. We're up 12% in April over the year earlier. That's a big increase. And one of the bigger increases in that group is the 9% increase in those buy now, pay later schemes. So you basically...
People putting stuff on tick.
Pretty much, yeah. And then, but interestingly, home loan arrears have dropped. So it appears that people are prioritizing which debts they pay first. Of course, your home, most important. You're going to pay your mortgage before, say, the new pair of shoes you bought online.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, that you identify a pair of shoes. Okay, so the mortgage debt, we know exactly what that's going to. Do we know what the arrears debts have purchased?
Well, you have to probably think that it would be something online, because that's often where those buy now, pay later schemes come into effect. And that it's easy to do, isn't it? Click it and just pay later, right? A lot of people do that. But it's not just that. It's credit cards are sort of next in the line, you know. So you're going to pay your home loan, then you'll pay your credit card, and then, well, maybe you'll pay for your buy now, pay later, but then you've got auto loans as well. So what it seems like what's happening is that consumers are prioritizing which loans are the most important. You need a car, you need your home, but maybe you can forget about those pair of shoes you bought and then put them at the back of the closet, and they won't remind you that you owe on that. However, it still affects your credit rating. Yeah. So it doesn't pay to leave these debts. You really need to get on top of it. If you don't know how to manage it, there's a lot of budget advice out there. Certainly banks and so on are willing to talk to people who are getting into trouble. If you can't afford your home loan, maybe that's something you should be doing.
Okay, let's talk about KiwiSaver, because a bunch of Kiwis are about to miss out on the government top-up. What's the deal?
Yeah, so ASB does this annual report, the ASB Bank, and they found, according to their study, about hundreds of thousands of people will miss out. And a lot of these people are self-employed New Zealanders. So normally, if you have a job, your employer will contribute your KiwiSaver off your paycheck every couple of weeks, which is great. But if you're a self-employed person, you may not have that system set up. And so you wait and you wait and you wait. And now today is June 1st. And if you don't make the minimum payment, which I have the number right here, you have to contribute $1,042.86 by the end of June in order to get the government's top-up of $521.43.
So that's a per annum amount.
It's a per annum.
You have to contribute it throughout the year to get the bonus payment, basically.
That's right. And it adds up. You know, if you don't contribute that basic, you're going to miss out on that payment. And if you do that consistently, you know, over the years that you're going to be saving for your retirement, you're going to lose like $25,000 of, you know, base capital, not counting what you might have earned by investing that money. So it's certainly something, you know, to keep on mind. And you've got 30 days to do it. So, you know.
Okay, the clock is ticking. 30 days and you can still get it. All right, let's take a womble around the market.
All right, so the top 50 index, it rose more than 0.5% today, a 65-point gain to 11,373. And that's really good because in Asia, the markets were a little bit uneasy about what's going on with inflation and the US dollar, which spiked up, and you're seeing that in our currency at 64.9 US cents, 90.5 Australian, and steady at 51.6 British pounds.
Thanks, Nona. Ka kite. Nona Peltier there with Business News. 3 Kiwi Rail workers have been injured after a shunter derailed in Auckland overnight. Kiwi Rail says it came off the tracks near Hannigan Drive in St John's about 1:30 this morning. The company's acting chief executive, David Gordon, joins us now. Kia ora, David. First off, how are your workers doing?
Well, they're doing fine. I guess the way to look at it is to say it's a bit like they've been in a car accident, a bit banged and bruised, feeling a bit sore, and I think, you know, probably now feeling a bit shaken, thinking about what might have been, but mercifully, all okay.
So first of all, what happened?
Well, we still have to do a proper investigation to establish what happened. But the train itself, it was a loco travelling by itself. It had delivered some wagons. It was travelling back. It was crossing from one line to the other. And somehow or another, it came off the track as it was crossing between the two. What happened is actually pretty rare. Now, locos do come off the rails, but they tend to stay upright. But on this occasion, it both came off and then fell on its side, which is obviously the most concerning part of the incident.
Were all 3 workers on board?
Yes, they were, yeah.
And how much does this thing weigh, roundabout?
Actually, I don't know, but I've seen the size of the 2 cranes that are having to lift it up.
Yeah.
So it's a very heavy thing.
So I know you're doing a full investigation, but what things will you be looking at? Do you know yet about the speed it was tracking, and have you got a way of monitoring that?
Yeah, we don't yet know the speed it was tracking. We do have a way. So locos, like aircraft, have an equivalent of a black box. So we can download that, all that is provided to the regulatory authorities. We'll also be looking at the track once the loco is clear.
Is that manually switched, the track? Sorry to interrupt, David, but when you say it was crossing over, how's that happen?
It's automatically switched.
Right.
So we'll be checking the track once the loco is clear to see it's damaged as a result of the loco coming off, sure, but could it have been something on the track that caused it to come off? We have to investigate that. We also have to look at the loco itself. Was there a failure, some form of mechanical failure? And obviously we'll look at the black box and say, how was it travelling at the time?
Right now, David, can you say whether there has been some safety breach or mistake that has led to this?
No, I can't say that at the moment until I know. But clearly, a loco is lying on its side. Something has gone wrong, and we just have to get to the bottom of what it is.
Yeah, so what is actually happening on site at the moment? What's the state of the tracks? What continued impact is it having? And you mentioned the crane.
When I last looked, which I got a photo about 10 minutes ago, 2 cranes were on site. The loco was stropped and hooked up, and they're preparing for the lift. They'll put that back on the rails and tow it back to our depot in Westfield. We think there's about 5 hours' work between getting the site clear and getting the site ready for trains to run in the morning.
So, David, at the moment, are trains completely off on that route, or what disruption?
Yes, they are. It is totally disrupted. So the commuters of Auckland on that particular route heading into downtown were unable to travel today, and Auckland Transport had to put on buses, and the same thing tonight, which we're very regretful about.
So you reckon, say again, what time will we be up and running?
By the time we get it up and going and open, there won't be much trains running. But we want to have it opening for tomorrow morning's peak.
Appreciate your time, David. That's David Gordon, who's Kiwi Rail's acting CEO there. It is 20 to 6. Kia ora e te whānau. After 6, we get to the bottom of why hundreds of bus trips have been cancelled in Auckland. Ho mai o whakaaro, love your feedback on anything you've heard on the programme this evening. You can text us 2101, tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ, and also the email address, checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. Time for us to get to the headlines now. Anei a iwi, mina pita kōrero.
Kia ora, Lisa. Patient Voice Aotearoa spokesperson Malcolm Mulholland has welcomed the report into Pharmac, saying it's clear the Pharmac model is broken. He told Checkpoint he thinks the way Pharmac assesses which drug should or shouldn't be funded is sometimes not followed, and it's a big area of concern. The former Foreign Affairs Minister, Winston Peters, claims the Prime Minister should have been more aspirational going into her meeting with US President Joe Biden. But Jacinda Ardern says New Zealand has reaffirmed its very, very close relationship with the United States. Christchurch City Council has revealed its much-mooted stadium is now projected to cost up to $683 million. Crusaders CEO Colin Mansbridge told Checkpoint the budget blowout of up to $150 million is a huge shock. Fire stations are looking for surplus red hose to make up for the new yellow hose being pulled off trucks for safety reasons. The new Plymouth fire crews say the yellow hose has failed 3 times, most recently inside a burning house on Friday. The Met Service says damaging winds across the west of the North Island could continue tonight, accompanied by large waves. Meteorologist Angus Hines says the weather should start to ease tomorrow afternoon. And the Taranaki District Health Board, which last year offered bacon butties to help boost vaccination rates, is giving away a heartwarming soup this winter to those getting the vaccine, as well as flu and measles jabs. Those are the headlines. Looking at traffic now, as you heard in the news, strong wind warnings are affecting the North Island. If you're driving through the Desert Road and over Rimutaka Hill in Wellington this evening, take care. There may also be wind issues tomorrow morning over the Harbour Bridge in Auckland as well, around 8 a.m. I'll update you with the latest news and weather at 6.
My interest peaked when there was the mention of free food and a hearty soup. I wonder what flavour it is.
Tomato.
Is it?
I don't know.
You're guessing. Okay. If anyone had the jab today there and got the free soup, can you tell us what flavour it was? Text us on 2101 or tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ. Let's get to some of your feedback now on the Christchurch Stadium and the potential budget blowout. Wow, that's got you going. This listener says there's a lot of anti-stadium sentiment in Christchurch. The following words are all printed in capitals. Don't do it. We don't need it. Craig says another missed opportunity that the previous national government stuffed up by delaying the project. Why don't they re-tender? Go to the Chinese and Japanese companies. At least in Japan, companies know about earthquake-proof standards. And this person says, just because everyone else has a fancy stadium doesn't mean we should. For $700 million, and we haven't even started building it yet, costs will surely rise further. We could buy a huge amount of entertainment for the young people he talked about, let alone housing, infrastructure, etc. His point, though, is if you don't have the stadium, the entertainers will not come. They'll go to other areas. Hogwash, this person says. The average punter can't afford to go to the rugby anyway. Concerts and rugby does equal multi-use, a cost that Christchurch cannot afford. Are you going to ask Jerry Brownlee why the stadium wasn't built, another listener says, and completed while he was in charge of the Christchurch rebuild? He wanted this outlay of taxpayer money. Okay, one more and then I'll call it quits. Neville from Invercargill says the largest city in the South Island needs a 30,000 capacity indoor stadium. A lot of people stacking up on both sides of the fence there. Keep it coming. Text us on 2101 or you can tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ. There was chaos on the Kapiti Coast today after tornadoes ripped through, tearing roofs off houses and knocking trees down. About 5 properties on Waikanai Beach were damaged, with at least 2 families spending the night elsewhere. A second tornado hit nearby Otaihanga half an hour later, bringing down trees that totally demolished a sleepout. Our reporter Hamish Cardwell and cameraman Angus Drever went to see the damage.
Roger Smith and his wife Mavis had just got home when chaos struck just after 11 a.m.
All of a sudden there was a huge bang and our 2 bifold doors flew open, and the gust of wind that came in was unbelievably strong. It was like a bomb going off. Everything was blowing off everywhere, including inside the garage. Everything fell down.
Yeah.
We managed to fight the 2 doors closed again. Unlock them. And we observed all our furniture and
blown
in the garden blown everywhere, all the heavy stuff, branches blown off trees. We sat down and thought, oh, God, that was absolutely terrible. Then there was a knock on the door about 2 minutes later, and the guy said to us, have you seen your roof? So we said no. We went out at the front and half our roof had gone.
Yeah.
And the fence down the front had gone, and
the gate had gone. And there was tiles on
I think we just fell apart then.
Yeah.
Roger and Mavis will have to spend the night with friends. The tornado came from the west, tore a path through their garden and shredded their fence. Over the road, Lily Richardson was home with her twin baby daughters Madison and Mia, one who was sick, when all hell started to break loose.
Had like a random hailstorm just kind of come down, and then the wind just started swirling outside the ranch slider in our lounge, and I just saw the leaves and saw the neighbours, a big gust of wind through the neighbours' fence area, and it was like, shit, is this a tornado?
It slammed into her place, ripping gaping holes in the roof in 2 places, and sent the trampoline into the neighbour's property, and knocked over their 8-burner gas barbecue.
I could just see, I think, like the outer side of it swirling outside my window. I thought my ranch slider was going to smash through the lounge, so I just scooped my girls off the couch and just hid with them on the ground in front of the couch, hoping that the window wouldn't cave in.
A second tornado in Otaihanga around half an hour later damaged several properties and brought down trees. And it comes just a few weeks after 20 properties were totally written off and many others damaged when a much larger tornado ripped through nearby Levin.
And it's 13 minutes to 6. Kia amo tonu mai. You're listening to Checkpoint on RNZ National. The first Matariki public holiday is less than a month away, and while for many excitement is building, some concern has been raised about just how it might be marked. Matariki holds significant spiritual weight for many Māori, and some fear it could become commercialised or become a party with public fireworks displays. Here's Māori News reporter Jamie Tahana.
Rangi Matamoa is an astronomer and was chair of the government's Matariki Advisory Committee. After decades of campaigning for Matariki, he's brimming with excitement. But Professor Matamoa's advisory board also had some concerns, like the potential commercialisation of Matariki.
You know, because commercialism takes something like the birth of Jesus Christ and turns it into flying reindeer and Santa. and takes something like the death of Jesus Christ and turns it into 12-foot rabbits that lay chocolate eggs. I'd hate to see the Matariki possum.
In a statement, the chief executive of the Retailers Association, Greg Harford, said they're conscious of those concerns. He says New Zealanders are free to shop on the day if they want to, but it's advised its members not to commercialise the day. There have also been concerns raised about plans for public fireworks displays. Rangi Matamua again.
We thought, well, why would you try and replace the magnificence of the night sky with artificial lights? I just think the whole idea is to look into the stars.
Some councils, like Auckland and Christchurch, have abandoned Matariki fireworks off the back of such advice. But some, including Nelson and Wellington, are pushing ahead, though Wellington City Council's Chief Māori Officer, Karepa Wall, says things are a bit more nuanced. The mana whenua of Te Whanganui Atara is Taranaki Whānui. Traditionally, as it is for many West Coast and Southern Māori, Matariki isn't the new year. It's Puanga, which rises a couple of weeks before.
Taranaki came down here into Wellington, and actually there's also a big, huge range there in the Remataka range there. So obviously, again, you can't really see the horizon and where Matariki's coming up. But higher in the sky is Puanga, and so an ability for them to celebrate their natural new year.
In fact, Karepa Wall says the capital's fireworks were moved to Matariki on mana whenua advice. Mr Wall says a traditional ceremony will be held on Puanga and the display for the national public holiday, but he's open to change.
The wonderful thing in New Zealand is that our culture continues to evolve. Our culture continues to modernise, and so if there's a point in the future that our mana whenua decide that actually we need to revisit that kind of decision and possibly look at other things, then we'll be open to having those kind of conversations.
Jack Thatcher is a celestial navigator in Tauranga. Yesterday, he and 150 others ascended Mauao before dawn to glimpse the first new moon and then sunrise of the Matariki season. Matariki is significant to him, but he's ambivalent about the other concerns.
It's like anything. Commercialisation is going to happen. People said, we're going to make it, a sacred day. And I said, no, it's, Matariki is about celebration. So if people want to have, wine and celebrate in the ways that people want to celebrate, that's up to them. I have no problem with that.
Rangi Matamua says Matariki is about coming together, reflecting on the past, celebrating the present and looking to the future. Matariki hunga nui, Matariki of many people.
It's been revealed New Plymouth firefighters looking for people inside a burning house had to pull out when their hose failed on Friday. They have since banned the hose, and that ban is now spreading around the country's fire stations. The union warned Fens in March the new type of hose was prone to puncturing. Phil Pennington reports.
All the yellow hose widely used on many fire trucks has been pulled off fire trucks in New Plymouth, leaving it short. A woman died in the house fire on Friday, and firefighters say the hose failure would not have altered that. But local union rep Rick Walsh says it did jeopardise the safety of the two crew members looking for her, and time was lost as they had to leave the burning building and replace the hose.
While they were inside the house, they discovered that the hose had blown in two places, approximately 8 metres back from where they were, which meant they didn't have full firefighting or protective capability.
The Professional Firefighters Union says the hose may have snagged on broken glass in the house, but that should not be enough to cause damage. The New Plymouth station's ban on Friday is spreading, with the union calling for firefighters nationwide to get the hoses off all trucks where possible. The union expects Fens to follow suit. Fens has been approached by RNZ for comment. Rick Walsh suffered serious burns in a firefight long ago, so he was not mucking around when he found out on Friday about the failure, especially as this type of hose had failed twice recently, though without jeopardising safety in those instances.
30 years ago, I got blown up. I have 30% of my body burnt. So, what saved me and my partner was that the integrity of the hose we were using then. So I know very well why we need to have water when you go into a burning building.
He says his New Plymouth crews do not have enough sturdier hose to go around all the backup trucks, but the public should not worry as the frontline trucks will have it and firefighters will adapt. An email alert to another brigade in the Hutt Valley reads, "Urgent safety notice. This hose is defective and unsafe for use at this time." The National Union Secretary, Watty Watson, says FENZ needs to investigate the hose and its purchase.
We did raise concerns way back in March. Hoses have been an ongoing problem for firefighters, and we need to check why that is happening with that particular hose, because it's been happening more than once.
FENZ, in a national notice in March that RNZ has seen, said the hose was lightweight, but evaluation of concerns that it punctures more easily had shown its performance is comparable to other hose in service. But it did say the hose would likely have a shorter operational life than some other brands.
Rafael Nadal has demonstrated once again he's the king of clay by beating longtime rival Novak Djokovic in a late-night thriller to reach the French Open semis. Nadal is chasing a 14th Roland Garros title and needed over 4 hours to see off the Djokovic challenge. Sports editor Stephen Hewson reports.
Nadal makes it to the semis. And was this his biggest obstacle between him and a 14th Roland Garros title?
Talk of an end to Rafael Nadal's reign has proved premature again, as the clay court king stayed on course for a record-extending men's 22nd Grand Slam title. The rivalry between Nadal and Djokovic is the most enduring in men's tennis, with Nadal winning their 59th meeting 6-2, 4-6, 6-2, 7-6. setting up a semi-final clash against German third seed Alexander Zverev. The latest win also narrows the gap to 30 to 29 in the head-to-head battle between the pair. But Nadal isn't getting carried away.
It's always special play against each other, no? But tonight have been just a quarterfinals match, not a final. So that's different, you know, but still a super classic match.
World number one Djokovic concedes he was outplayed by Nadal.
I'm proud of fighting and staying till the last shot. I lost to a better player today. Had my chances, didn't use them. That's it, you know, over 4 hours battle, and I have to accept this defeat.
Knowing this French Open could well be his last, Nadal's already turning his thoughts to the semi-final.
Been a beautiful night for me, without a doubt, very emotional one. But tomorrow we're going to start thinking about the things that I need to do to be ready for that semi-finals now. And the main goal is be focused on hold the level that I have been playing.
The first semi-finalists have also been found in the women's draw, with American Coco Gauff set to play the unseeded Italian Martina Trevisan.
Celebrated for its Bacon Butties initiative, the Taranaki District Health Board has reached back into its culinary bag of tricks to help boost vaccination rates. This time, to mark the start of winter, a heart-warming soup with a fresh bread roll was on the menu. Our Taranaki Whanganui reporter Robin Martin has the story.
A steady stream of people rocked up to the Powderham Street Vaccination Centre in New Plymouth today to get a jab and tuck into a cup of hot soup. Clinical team leader for the vaccination rollout, Sharon Crow, explains the idea, which extends beyond COVID to flu jabs and MMR shots.
It's a cold winter's day. You know, we're into winter. It's windy and gusty out there. We just thought it would be just nice to offer a nice hot soup when someone came in to be vaccinated.
So what's on the menu?
So we've got chicken and vegetable soup here with some ordinary rolls. Here we've got a gluten-free pumpkin soup, and we've also got gluten-free bread to go with that as well.
Vaccinator Haim Ainsworth got pulled off his day job to help out with kitchen duties.
Sure, it's not my regular job. I've never worked in food prep, but it's really lovely, and the response has been fantastic.
So tell us, have you been preparing this from scratch, or have you been?
Oh, yeah, no, I wouldn't. I don't think that would be the best thing to do to our client base. I believe some of them are pre-made and just heated up all together, and then I think one of them might be homemade, but I can't guarantee that. That's actually not true. It's not homemade.
Joanna came in for a flu jab and scored a cosy blanket as a spot prize, along with her wellness pack.
What a great idea, and I hope more people come through and take advantage of what's on offer today.
And the soup wasn't half bad either.
Wonderful.
Good.
Warmed me up for while I was waiting.
Good.
Yep.
Glenys scored herself a new beanie as well.
I did have a cup of soup, which is very nice, considering it's such a
not a nice day anyway.
And how was the soup?
Very nice. Whoever made it, 10 out of 10 to them.
Beverly had come in with husband Neil and hadn't expected so much to be on offer. She went for the chicken soup.
The soup was beautiful. Chicken soup, yes, lovely. Delicious. It was delicious. Yes, very tasty.
The Taranaki DHB has delivered more than 250,000 COVID shots. 69% of the general population is boosted, while 51% of Māori have had a third shot. Just 21% of Tamariki have had 2 shots. So far, 25 people have died with the virus in the province.
Well, we're just scratching the surface with your feedback on the Christchurch Stadium. Philip's got in touch. I'm living in Christchurch near Bromley, and feel sick at the smell of the burnt sewage plant that the council has left unfixed for many months. There could hardly be a better demonstration of the fact that Christchurch has far more urgent needs than to spend $750 million on a stadium. Another one says, furious at how many other projects, precincts, infrastructure, housing, social services this stupid bloody stadium has sucked money from. Every time the city cry is, there's no alternative. More like we're being held to ransom. No stadium, we need a sewage waste plant, that person texted, all in capitals. And this one, I support the continuation of the Christchurch Stadium project. Councils need to be ambitious when developing infrastructure. A thriving city needs future-thinking planning. Sue reckons the same. We definitely need a stadium in Christchurch, says Sue. Subsidising sports and events is so last century, this listener says. The answer is in the arts and culture audience, far more diverse than your average sports crowd.
RNZ News at 6. Kia ora tātou, ko Ivy Ashton tēnei. The Crusaders head says the massive budget blowout for the planned Christchurch Stadium is disappointing, but the project must go ahead. The City Council has announced the final estimated cost is $683 million, $150 million more than expected. The finish date has also been pushed out to April 2026. The public will now have the option of pressing ahead with the build, scaling back, or stopping altogether. Colin Mansbridge told Checkpoint the city needs the stadium.
We've got a big hole in the ground and it's right beside the central city, and every time you walk past you just feel it's incomplete, and there's memories that a whole generation in this city don't have. It absolutely is something that's missing from the place.
Colin Mansbridge says Christchurch can't afford not to have the stadium. Fire stations are looking for surplus red hose to make up for a new faulty type that has been taken off trucks. New Plymouth fire crews say the new yellow hose has failed 3 times, most recently inside a burning house on Friday where a woman died. The station has become the first to ban it. A fire and emergency email seen by RNZ says the national manager has ordered the yellow hose be removed where possible. FENZ wants any districts that have surplus red 45mm hose to supply it to other stations. The Catholic Church in New Zealand says a total of just over 1,600 reports of abuse were made to it between 1950 and 2021. They were made by 1,122 individuals against clergy, brothers, nuns and lay people. Andrew McRae reports.
The church says 592 alleged abusers were named, and almost half of the reported abuse was sexual. It says 3/4 of the abuse occurred before 1990, with a majority in the 1960s and 70s. The 5 church organisations with the highest number of complaints were St John of God Brothers, Marist Brothers, Sisters of Nazareth, the Archdiocese of Wellington and the Diocese of Auckland. The research found most of the abuse alleged against priests and brothers was the sexual harm of children, while allegations against sisters and nuns was for harm such as physical, emotional or psychological abuse or neglect.
An inquiry has been opened into a train derailment in Auckland today. A Kiwi Rail locomotive came off the tracks and rolled onto its side at St John's at about 1:30 this morning. 2 of the 3 crew suffered minor injuries. The Transport Accident Investigation Commission says the investigation will focus on the circumstances and causes of the accident. 2 investigators will examine the locomotive, including its history, performance and maintenance. The weather and safety systems will also be looked at. Parts of the country are in for more rain tonight. Met Service forecaster Angus Hines says many parts of the Motu have experienced strong winds, heavy rain, thunderstorms and hail throughout the day. He says more bad weather is expected in western parts of the country tonight.
It's a very unstable atmosphere at the moment. We had a big frontal system crossover overnight last night, really, which brought rain to a lot of places early today, and that's since moved away to the east, but it's brought this big mass of cold and unstable air across the country, which is what's generating all these thunderstorms.
Paradise Peak near Takaka was the wettest part of the country, recording 194 millimetres of rain in the 24 hours to 4 o'clock this afternoon. Heavy rain warnings remain in place overnight for the Bulla and Westland districts. And celebrated for its Bacon Butties initiative, the Taranaki District Health Board has reached back into its culinary bag of tricks to help boost vaccination rates. Vaccination rollout leader Sharon Crow says with the start of winter, offering a heartwarming soup seemed the natural thing to do.
You know, we're into winter, it's windy and gusty out there. We just thought it would be just nice to offer a nice hot soup when someone came in to be vaccinated.
As well as COVID shots, flu and measles jabs were also offered. Wellness packs and spot prizes were up for grabs as well. That's the news.
Tonight on Nights, Nick Tipping has some new New Zealand jazz for Inside Out. Rochelle Angus on living the high life in Singapore. That's high rise and high density. And this week's Hump Prize, not a book, but a couple of tickets to a celebration of them. Hear Me Roar, a poetry reading night featuring some of the nation's best bards at Featherston Booktown. Just spot the author and win on Nights of me, Brian Crump, after the news at 7 on RNZ National.
You're back with Lisa Owen and Checkpoint momentarily. Right now, the short forecast from Met Service to midnight Thursday. For Northland, Auckland, Coromandel and Bay of Plenty, fine spells, isolated showers becoming more frequent tomorrow morning with squally thunderstorms possible. Gisborne and Hawke's Bay mainly fine, however a few showers. I don't know that this is the right... where are we getting squalls in this report? Is this the right one? I hope so. There's squalls everywhere, I'm pretty sure. That was pretty much with high winds, right? I'm not sure that this is the right forecast. But if it's raining, can expect it to continue, I would say, until tomorrow night. What do you think?
Yeah, assume the brace position, Evie. I think that's the best way to go. And hopefully at the next headlines we'll have the accurate weather forecast for you, but I think it's pretty crappy for everyone. No mai, hoki mai, this is Checkpoint, ko Lisa Owen tēnei. Hundreds of Auckland bus trips are being cancelled due to a lack of drivers. A resurgence of COVID cases is ripping through depots in various shifts. And it's not just bus services. The city's commuter ferries are running on reduced frequency too. Add to that a worldwide shortage of transit drivers and you've got the perfect storm. Auckland Transport Acting Group Manager Metro Services, Derek Copper, is with us now. Derek, tell us, on a daily basis, how many bus trips are being cancelled?
Good evening, Lisa. Well, we're looking at about 1,400 bus trips being cancelled each day due to driver shortage.
Wow, that's a hell of a lot.
It is. We operate typically 11,600 trips per day, so it can be up to close to 10% of trips each day.
So are you choosing which ones to sacrifice and sticking with more popular ones, or how are you prioritising which routes get a driver?
Look, cancelling any trip is very difficult, but we're working closely with the bus operators who manage the absenteeism and reallocation of drivers to duties. We prefer that they focus on trips that have a high frequency, so customers don't have to wait too long for another bus. And we want them to avoid subsequent trips to be cancelled, so we want to avoid long breaks between services and definitely avoid services with a low frequency, where services may only run every 30 minutes. And first and last trips when people really rely on those trips to get to work or to get home. School trips are top priority. We want to make sure that children get home and get to school on time as well.
Derek, is this just COVID or what's going on?
Look, COVID really just brought the issue into the surface. We have been dealing with the bus driver shortage for quite some time. and have been working with the Council of Trade Unions, bus operators and Waka Kotahi co-founders to find a way how we could improve the bus driver terms and conditions to make the profession more attractive. We know from our suppliers that bus drivers are leaving for lots of reasons. Some of them leave for pay, for better wages elsewhere in the transport industry. Others are looking for better lifestyle, different work patterns, and others just finding difficult dealing with often difficult customers, with particularly nowadays when everybody seems to be more on the edge. And there is quite a bit of abuse towards frontline employees, which is really sad because it does push some people to make different career choices.
A couple of things there, Derek. Are your drivers being pinched to drive trucks?
Look, we know from the operators that many drivers leave to drive trucks. Yes, definitely, that's one of the options. Others cite courier jobs and other driving opportunities.
Is there any way you could bond them or offer them bonuses to stay beyond a certain period of time?
Well, we're working with the bus operators who employ bus drivers on different ways to do that. Bonding has been tried, but often it does become a barrier to employment to some people. So there are different mechanisms we try to do that, but to address the problem, we really need to improve the overall terms and conditions. And it was pleasing to see Minister Wood announcing an additional funding package to help lift the driver wages in New Zealand across the country.
Derek, I was just going through some papers while you're talking to me there, and we've just had some feedback from somebody who is obviously in the know. They suggest that the starting rate for bus drivers in Auckland is about $23.30. Does that sound about right?
That sounds close to it. Not everybody will be there, but yes.
Okay.
It will be close to
So why would you put up with all the bollocks that you've just outlined with aggressive customers and, people being attacked and abused for $23.30 an hour?
Well, this is why, Lisa, we're working collectively with the industry to work on a package to work out how best we could uplift those terms and conditions. Because it does.
So what's
fair
funding for what they have to put up with, the responsibility, the shift work? What's fair?
In terms of the responsibilities?
Yeah, in terms of the price that you're paying, $23.30, you've just said that people are increasingly aggressive and abusive, and we've all seen those media reports where there's been some violence on buses. And it's a big responsibility, the safety of those people you're transporting around. Given that, what's a fair price for an hourly rate if $23.29 is not keeping them in your employ?
Well, you're absolutely right. It's definitely not good rate. We're working towards anywhere between $27 and $30 to be competitive with the rest of the country, the industry. But we need some additional funding from our funders to enable this. So work is underway, and we hope that further conversations with the central government, our agency, and our council allow us to provide additional funding to support operators to pay better wages.
Are you talking to the Minister about topping up your funds?
Well, public transport in Auckland and the rest of the country is co-funded by Waka Kotahi, and the Minister has pledged $61 million towards lifting the wages. So yes, we are looking to the ministry to come up with some additional funds to address the problem. So
how would you sell this job to someone then?
Oh, look, if the job is, if somebody likes to have a different experience, different day, deal with different customers and really enjoy interaction with those people they carry, because majority of our customers are great, and most bus drivers enjoy the interactions with them and enjoy providing good service to our communities. It is just those few incidents that happen, unfortunately, that does create a sense of doubt and risk for them to continue staying in this job, particularly those who either have other options because they're young, or those who are in retirement and in the current situation with COVID. They're certainly looking at maybe less challenging job with the current environment we have.
Yeah. Derek, I'm just wondering, we're at a point where we're trying to encourage people to take public transport, right? And you're saying that you're canning about 1,400 bus trips a day, which raises huge reliability issues, right? Government's offering cheap fares at the moment, wanting everyone to get on the bus. I mean, what do you think this is going to do to public confidence in terms of the reliability of the services you're offering?
Yeah, look, Lisa, this is definitely a risk. It's something that we're really trying to resolve and mitigate very as quickly as we can. At this stage, capacity is there in terms of providing service. The reliability is the key factor that people value, and they want to turn up and go. So while we're working on solving the issue, we try to communicate with customers, help them plan their trips so they could be least affected as possible during those times as we restore some of those establishments at different bus operators.
Derek, before you head off, can you tell us exactly how many drivers short you are? What number?
We're looking at about 270 drivers.
You need 270 drivers.
That's our understanding from the collaboration and reports we have from our suppliers, our bus operators. It's a lot of drivers. So plenty of opportunities for those people who think they could join bus driving and give it a go, because it is overall a great job, and I'm sure there will be good stories for some drivers to share.
Appreciate your time, Derek. That's Derek Coper, who is Auckland Transport Acting Group Manager, Metro Services. 270 bus drivers short there, and they are acknowledging that they've got an issue with the amount that they are paying them. The chance to be a New Zealand heavyweight champion is fuelling an All Black Legends decision to step into the ring. Two-time Rugby World Cup winner Kevin Mealamu was today confirmed as the headline act for the return of the Fight for Life charity event next month. But as Clay Wilson reports, the 43-year-old former hooker hopes it will be the start of a journey to a title of a different kind.
Here's Mealamu!
For 13 years, Kevin Mealamu helped the All Blacks deliver knockout punch after knockout punch. Now, after almost 7 years in rugby retirement, he'll be delivering punches for real as he steps into the realm of professional boxing. A decision, he says, was easier than some might think.
When the opportunity arose, I had butterflies and excitement and nervousness at the same time. So excitement that it's something new, and probably the nervousness came from I haven't done this before, which means it's going to be a good challenge.
One starting with facing former Warriors and Kiwis forward Wairangi Kopu at the Fight for Life in Auckland next month. But the sweet science has always been a passion for Mealamu, who grew up with a boxing bag in the garage and Hall of Fame heavyweight David Tua down the road.
In Mangere, I used to work at the Palmer's Garden World, and his family house would be one of the houses that I'd walk past, and so I'd always look up and think to myself, man, the man's legendary, and I'd always see him around Mangere driving past as well. So at some stage I'd love to be able to go with Monty and get his blessings before we start this journey.
Monty is former Kiwis and Warriors hardman Monty Beetham, who won the New Zealand Cruiserweight title in 2015. Beetham is the architect of Mealamu's move into boxing and believes he has all the attributes to be successful.
He's a wonderful guy to coach, does all his homework, good work ethic, and his engine, like Wairangi, is out of this world, and he's got some power. Can't forget that when he's in the front row scrummaging against the best in the world, he's a force when he's using his weight in the right positions.
Force he still possesses, having kept himself fit and become a gym owner since retiring after the All Blacks World Cup success in 2015. But not everything has come naturally for both fighters. Kopu admits there is one thing he and Mealamu have been struggling with ahead of their fight.
You don't really sit in a press conference in a rugby league background and then start talking smack about your opposition. It's just not really heard of. It's funny because if you could have picked out like a couple of people that you wouldn't really fight because they're actually such nice people, Kev would probably be on that list.
For Mealamu, as he did over 132 tests for the All Blacks, his talking will be done once the contest begins, especially given he has one eye on a shot at the New Zealand heavyweight title before he hangs up his gloves.
I'd love to be able to say, man, I love playing rugby and was good at doing that, but also being able to say, maybe I might be able to be a New Zealand heavyweight boxer. I want to be able to say when I walk away from this that people saw me as a really good boxer, not just a former rugby player trying to box.
Details of other Fight for Life bouts are being finalised, with a portion of ticket sales being donated to leading youth mental health and suicide prevention charity I Am Hope.
It is 17 minutes past 6 and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. The discussion about the Christchurch Stadium is the gift that just keeps on giving. This person says a Dunedin point of view on the Christchurch Stadium, cost blowout. Same old bollocks from the rugby concert crowd, hoping others will pay. If it's a financial winner, let them stump up. The profits are imaginary, the ongoing costs are not, says Andrew. Lawrence has got in touch and says going from calling it a rugby stadium to a multi-use stadium still doesn't change the fact that it would only serve a very small and exclusive subset of the Christchurch population. Time to move on, reckons Lawrence. On the subject of Pharmac and the final report and shake-up there, this one, Pharmac has been wonderful for me and does a good job in a very high-demanding situation. Every drug can't be funded. Jeremy from Wellington reckons the biggest health inequity is for men. Women live for many healthier and longer years, he says. Treatments for men should be properly prioritised. And Jim from Papamoa, thank you so much for getting in touch, Jim. This is about the Taranaki Vaccination Centre offering soup, chicken, or what was it? Gluten-free pumpkin soup. Jim says soup, 3 question marks, bring back the bacon butty. Who's on Team Jim? 2101 on the text. With a record number of women in Cabinet, Australia's Albanese government's ministerial team has been sworn in today. The Prime Minister says the new lineup will deliver on his government's priorities of housing, childcare and an Indigenous voice to Parliament. The ABC's Stephanie Boris reports.
A new front bench for a new government.
It's a team which is overflowing, I think, with talent.
Prime Minister Anthony Albanese's team includes many old faces, but with new titles. Richard Marles, the Defence Minister. Claire O'Neill takes on Home Affairs. Tanya Plibersek will cover environment and water, while her previous role of education is being handed to Jason Clare. But a new cabinet isn't just about positions. It's also an indication of what the government wants to prioritise.
If you follow my history in politics, housing has been a passion of mine.
The previous government didn't include housing in cabinet. Mr Albanese has.
That will be an absolute priority of my government.
However, the Youth and Veterans Affairs portfolios have been moved from Cabinet to the Outer Ministry. Another priority for this government is childcare, its biggest single spending promise in the election campaign. More financial support for more families from the middle of next year. Leading that change will be Social Services Minister Amanda Rishworth. Early childhood education is in the Outer Ministry, Anne Ali taking on that role. The West Australian, alongside Ed Husick, will become the first Australian Muslim ministers. And another first is the record number of women in Cabinet, 10 out of the 23, and another 9 across the front bench.
This is far more representative than any government party room has ever been in our history. We are making progress.
However, women still make up less than half of Labor's leadership team. Reform to Indigenous affairs is also high on the government's agenda. Linda Burney will become the first Indigenous woman in federal cabinet as the Minister for Indigenous Australians. First Nations Senator Malarndirri McCarthy will become Assistant Minister for Indigenous Australians and Indigenous Health. And Senator Pat Dodson will serve as Special Envoy for Reconciliation and the implementation of the Uluru Statement from the Heart.
This is a priority for the government, and Patrick Dodson will have responsibility along with the Minister, Linda Burney.
Speaking in Adelaide last night, Linda Burney urged all sides of politics to work together with a pointed message to the Leader of the Opposition.
This is an opportunity for unity for leadership and an opportunity for Peter Dutton to show his much talked about different side.
After 2 months of a strict lockdown, Shanghai has eased COVID-19 restrictions. People can move freely around the city of around 25 million people, but at least 650,000 residents remain confined to their homes in the economic centre and trade hub. CNN's Selena Wang has more.
Sprinting with shopping bags, residents racing to get out. After more than 2 months of a brutal citywide lockdown, Shanghai is finally cracking open the seal. The city's main train station packed with people trying to escape, but actually getting out of here is a treacherous journey. The city says it will fully resume transportation today. But earlier, people have been seen trekking miles across highways, dragging their luggage or strapping it to bikes. Even journeys of dozens of miles or more, not swaying their determination. The train station parking lot has become a campsite, some leaving days earlier than their departure time, terrified they could be locked down again if they stay at home. The masses outside the train station, a stark contrast to the rest of Shanghai. Hundreds of thousands still remain locked in. But even the lucky ones allowed out face a laundry list of restrictions. There are checkpoints everywhere.
No, this is definitely not freedom.
This Shanghai resident and her son, who wished to remain anonymous for fear of persecution from authorities, were finally allowed out after more than 80 days. Her only solace is seeing her son outside and smiling for the first time in a long time.
My child now has depression because of the lockdown. He started waking up at night and crying and shouting and saying there were people wearing masks in his bedroom, and he stopped eating.
That harsh reality, miles away from what the government wants to show. This state TV reporter pulled a microphone and camera away during a live interview when the resident starts to complain about the lockdown. She says, "I've never lived through anything like this, being locked inside your home and not allowed to go out. What a big joke." Officials say the city will start returning to normal in June, but residents are doubtful.
So this does feel like endless nightmare.
Her freedom lasted less than a week. One COVID case was found near her, so she's back to lockdown. For over 2 months, Shanghai has had its freedom taken away. Residents imprisoned at home or forced into quarantine centers like these. No one knows when this nightmare will fully end.
In the Queen's 70 years on the throne, she's dealt with 14 Prime Ministers, starting with Winston Churchill right through to Boris Johnson. And the Queen sits down with the PM every week. The BBC's Vicky Young reports.
The Queen and her Prime Ministers, head of state and head of government, appear side by side for dozens of public events. But the relationship is forged behind closed doors. Weekly meetings at the palace.
Very nice to see you again.
Lovely to see you again. That we only get a glimpse of. The Queen's views are kept private, political neutrality carefully adhered to. Her words written by her Prime Ministers.
I pray that the blessing of Almighty God may rest upon your councils.
Her first was Winston Churchill. He was protective of this new young sovereign who had so much to learn.
Now upon the shoulders of Sir Anthony falls the role of the Queen's First Minister.
After Churchill came Anthony Eden, whose decision to send troops to Suez in 1956 brought national humiliation. In 1964, Harold Wilson became the Queen's first Labour Prime Minister.
Prime Minister, Your Majesty.
She does her homework. I hadn't done mine. I hadn't read a particular cabinet committee, which I didn't chair, and was leaving for the weekend. She knew I hadn't done my homework. She's very nice about it.
The Queen's constitutional right is to be kept informed of government policy. She offers encouragement and advice.
Every Prime Minister, I would guess, from talking with other Prime Ministers and from my own experience, has the greatest friendliness from the Queen.
On rare occasions, the Queen has very subtly aired her views, like this speech where Mr Callaghan's government was considering devolution.
I cannot forget that I was crowned Queen of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland.
Good evening, Your Majesty.
You've had a very long day.
When Margaret Thatcher became Britain's first female Prime Minister, there were reports that the Queen privately disapproved of the government's social agenda, but the Iron Lady played down suggestions of a serious rift.
Even if she did say it, all right, she may have felt something, but there was never any difficulty in saying anything to me. Any difficulty at all.
Every year, there's a royal invitation to Balmoral, matters of state discussed over a cup of tea.
In the years that I came to know her as Prime Minister, Prime Ministers had private meetings with the Queen each week. She invariably looks forward.
Tony Blair certainly appreciated the Queen's advice after his landslide victory for Labour.
Even though I was the politician, she was the monarch, I found her not just useful, but sometimes deeply insightful.
But anyway, it's very good to welcome you here. And when you have to explain what you're trying to achieve, it's a very good form of therapy. And imagine doing that to the world's greatest public servant, who's seen it all and heard it all, there's really no better way of getting your head straight about what you're trying to do.
14 prime ministers, 14 very different politicians with their own visions, worries and agendas. For 7 decades, the Queen has worked with all of them, a monarch at the heart of a democratic constitution, advising, encouraging and warning, providing continuity as each new political tide swept in.
Okay, back to that stadium in Christchurch. This listener says, we already have an indoor arena for concerts. Most residents can't afford a subscription to Sky, let alone tickets to the rugby. Why are the ratepayers subsidising professional sport? Cam says, as a lapsed Cantab, I feel the best spend of the $700 million is to reinstate the passenger train service between Christchurch and Dunedin. The Cantabrians can travel to the luxury of the Forsyth Bar Stadium and spend their hard-earned money in the south. Cam, are you trolling the Cantabrians? Because it certainly sounds like it. Someone else says, why would Christchurch repeat the Wellingtonians' mistake? Wellington ratepayers funded the stadium. It's a disaster. And they go on to point out that now Wellington has leaky building problems, sewage running in the streets and bursting pipes. How could Christchurch be stupid enough to do the same, neglect its water and waste and have a city shrouded in the stench of sewage? On the need for bus drivers, 270 of them needed in Auckland. One listener remembers an ad campaign that they ran once before and says they need to run it again. The campaign read, always wanted a corner office with a view? Well, how about being paid to travel, plus drive a $400,000 company vehicle? Become a bus driver. The wages, $23.29 an hour, we are told, but they're hoping to get it up to $27 an hour. So if you want a job, they're looking for you if you are a driver. That's about all we have got time for this evening. Don't forget the Late News team will keep you updated throughout the night. If you missed anything on the show, you can find Checkpoint on Spotify, Apple or wherever you get your podcasts from. Or if you just want to listen again, you can go there too. Ko te kaupapa tuatahi a pōpō tomorrow from 5 a.m. First up's going to be speaking with the Deputy Prime Minister Grant Robertson about Pharmac, free flu jabs and the Carmel Santa Maria saga. Whoa, that's going to be an interesting conversation. Tune in, 5 a.m.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30. Kia ora tātou, ko Ivy Ashton tēnei. The Crusaders boss says the $150 million budget blowout for the planned Christchurch Stadium is disappointing, but the project must go ahead. Patient Voice Aotearoa spokesperson Malcolm Mulholland has welcomed the report into Pharmac, saying it's clear the model is broken. Fire and Emergency claims a controversial new hose is not unsafe, but